A lot of organizations just consider the infrastructure and they just want to deal with what's going on with the infrastructure to protect their jobs. If I start identifying all my vulnerabilities, you're basically stripping me down naked in front of my boss. So as a security professional, you get a little on the defensive side, and that's just how we are, because that's our nature.
Welcome to the Threat Show. We are back. I'm Grant Wernick, CEO of Fletch. Darian's out today, and he'll be joining us in the near future. So I'm subbing in for him with my friend Chris Wilder here, the infamous security master of everything. Thanks for being back here with us, Chris.
Well, if you keep complimenting me like that, I'm going to keep coming back.
It's
Well,
warranted. Most people in cybersecurity don't think like you, man. You really are helping up-level the conversation for executives, and that's what this world needs. They need to bridge that gap.
it's a moving target, and originally I called it the zero sum game, but I think it's now become a moving target. And I mean, gosh, we've been so busy. The world's gone crazy. I mean, we've just started a bunch of different projects in Africa, and everything is really kind of boiling back down to critical infrastructure and how organizations, like in Africa as well as Europe and the big enterprises and the folks that are kind of doing some really interesting projects. Cybersecurity has really become a major issue with them, not just with, being reactive about and making sure, the garrison's set up, but it's also what's out there in the world and how do I kind of protect myself going forward. It's a busy time. CISOs are understandably about to lose their freaking minds. A lot of them are ill-equipped to do what they do, but we can hammer through that today. So
Yeah, that's the theme I've been seeing a lot, Chris. I've been seeing a lot of CSOs relying on old tactics, old ways.
yeah.
Oh man, if I just check the compliance boxes, I'll be okay. And in my conversations with a lot of my CSO friends, like, guys, the world's changing.
Hmm.
Executives actually need to understand this stuff. You can't just rely on compliance to be ahead. AI is making it so bad guys can move faster than ever. Like,
Yeah.
needs to be something that the whole organization cares about. And so, audience, as we bring the threat show back here, one thing that Chris and myself and Darian have been talking a lot about is we are here to be the bridge to help not just the cybersecurity professional, but the executive and just anybody within the organization that wants to be able to understand cyber threats, live ahead of cyber threats, and be educated, and so that you can go about having a wonderful business and a wonderful organization and do what you want to do and live your life. Security shouldn't be getting in the way, and it really is.
What's a typical skill set that you have to become a CISO? Is it technical or are you executive or what's
Yeah,
the
it depends on the company, but for the
yeah,
most, a lot of these folks come out of compliance. Like so many
yeah.
of them come out of compliance. Is that basically what you're saying?
Well, I mean, a lot of times they tend to be more technical and they
Yeah.
do a very good job of managing down. They're good at managing a team, managing a SOC, managing kind of all the processes, the portfolio, what's going on in the organization, and then they report quarterly up. And
Yeah.
so the interaction that they have is they have to work with legal and they have to work with the board and they have to work with their executive team to kind of, like you said, check the boxes. But I think we're kind of at a weird skills gap right now with CISOs that tend to be incredibly technical and tactical about the way that they manage cybersecurity and less about how do you manage up and how do you manage to the board. And so boards right now in all the projects I'm working on are pushing their CISOs. Typically CISO is a mid-level, mid-management job. It's just with a
Yeah,
C.
it's kind of a false title.
It is a false style. And don't get me started on field CISOs. Oh my God. But
You mean really good sales engineers?
good demo guys. Yeah. Guys that can do whiteboard very well.
To all my field CSO friends, you guys are amazing.
Yeah,
But
yeah. My favorite field CSO is a guy named Fred, and he's amazing on the whiteboard. And but
pretty sure I know Fred.
you get him in front of a keyboard, and he does he's he's completely lost. But that being said, CISOs tend to be very technical, and they don't have the skill sets to manage up. And so boards are pushing a lot more responsibility and pushing a lot of the, especially kind of with what was happening with a lot of the third-party risk management side of the world. And I break it down into compliance, cloud, and connection. So connecting with
Yeah.
your API security and things like that. And so it's really the ecosystem has grown so much. Boards are saying, guys, how do we protect our environment? Because I guess in the last 4 months, I've probably worked through 6 different ransomware attacks, ransomware breaches in mid-market companies. And it's companies who thought, well, I have an MSSP or I have an MSP or I have a security guy who happens to be my cousin Larry's brother-in-law who graduated with a CIS degree that are running the security side of it, and they really don't understand how to deal with it. But when you start dealing at the board level and you start dealing like the executive level, especially founder CEOs like you,
Yeah.
Grant, it's an emotional reaction that these guys have if they are breached. And so I walk through the five stages of death or whatever, the Skinner side of it. But when you get denial, and the whole thing is, my God, what could I have done to stop this? What could I have done to, not have this happen to my organization, my legacy? It's a very emotional reaction that they have. And then once you start getting into the board level, you have to start getting into things like disclosure and how's it going to affect my compliance, and how's it going to affect my cybersecurity insurance. And there's a lot of different things that a lot of CISOs right now today are not equipped to have those conversations upstream. And so that's where I think there's a chasm right now in the cybersecurity industry. And now that I've kind of got back out of the being the industry referee as an analyst, now I'm actually in there cranking the wrench and doing the work. You really see this
Happy about that
every day.
transition. I've been talking to you a bit lately. It sounds exciting, and it's nice to see you helping so many companies.
At my age, it's kind of more of a cause. So it's about giving back.
So it's interesting you keep talking about CSOs, and I have plenty of friends who are CSOs, and I talk to those fellows. But more and more, I'm seeing there's not that many CSOs to go around. And more and more organizations are
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, IT, this is your job." And now you're talking about somebody who is even actually oftentimes more technical. They're used to spend most of their time deploying servers and updating laptops. It's like cybersecurity really isn't even their first thought, but they have to do it. They're the only ones who can do it at an organization. And we're talking about organizations that are hundreds of people big.
Yeah.
And so talking to executives and such, it's like an executive comes and says, I read about something in the Wall Street Journal today. And they go, okay, great. I have like tons of other stuff to do. Do you really want me to look at that? And they go, yeah, I do. And like, great, it'll take me a day. And it's a
Yeah.
very reactive world. It's even more reactive than it is for those that can have cybersecurity teams and CSOs. And so I think that's where the problem is even becoming bigger because nation states are attacking those companies. Nation states are very sophisticated. CSO, and you have 10 guys in cybersecurity team. Nation states not as interested in you as they are in your supply chain. And your supply chain is the guy that doesn't have a CSO, doesn't have a here security team. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I think that's a huge change in the world.
Well, I think the CSO job and the CISO job, CISO job,
Yeah.
they're merging because you really can't delineate between, especially with IoT and what's going on with EPS and the endpoint security side of the world. Those two jobs are coming together. I mean, you think about the traditional role of a CSO, I mean, they typically come out of law enforcement. They come out of protection services. So their world is effectively dealing with executive protection, making sure my executives are safe, their families are safe, what our company's reputation is. It's that kind of very physical side of this, where the CISO obviously deals with the systems.
Yeah.
And those two worlds are merging with the very, very, very large enterprises. The threats are both physical and cyber. If you look at the amount of threats and breaches that have started coming up on endpoint security systems and Linux and all of those things, I mean, Canonical just had a massive vulnerability that they had to fix in two of their end of life products that on Ubuntu. And it only caught my attention because I used to work there. But
Oh,
but
really? Well, that's actually one of the trending threats right now that
yeah, I
Fletch is
know.
running.
Yeah,
So,
well, we could talk about that one a little bit, but those so endpoint security is really kind of where a lot of the vulnerabilities are coming from. It's still obviously phishing and everything like that, but we're still seeing that world is converging so much. My guess is probably, I don't know what you call it afterwards, but might just be the CIO that deals with both the physical security and the cybersecurity within the organization at some point in time. But the whole world is morphing, and we're seeing just this radical move within boards to put it all together in one location to say, yeah, here's where the bad guys are, and here's how we go get them.
you mentioned boards a lot of the time. These are not very sophisticated people when it comes to technical capabilities. They kind of have to depend on the folks that do know this stuff.
Yep.
And I'm seeing a shift here where it's like these are smart people. They want to be informed. They want
Mhm.
to know what attacks are starting to trend towards their organization. So they may not know that, oh, well, with the canonical one you just gave a second ago and Linux issues and that kind of stuff. They may never know how to touch a Linux kernel. They don't know how to do anything with code. but they know the company runs Linux and they just want an answer saying, look, we know this is headed our way. Companies like us are being attacked like this stuff. They run the same kind of software. They're in the same industry. I think you should be focused on this team. And it's like no brainer kind of get ahead of this stuff and bridge that gap of the conversation. This is something I've been thinking a lot about. And it's actually where I've taken the whole Fletch company towards threat forecasting,
Hmm.
which is like it's not just something that the person who's in that seat of updating systems needs to be thinking about. It's like all of us can be thinking about the threats headed our way. And it's funny you brought up endpoint, Chris, because yeah, the endpoint's age old, but when it comes down to it, the endpoint's really shifted. And a lot of this stuff isn't the computer's endpoint, it's the mobile phone, it's browser web, it's the servers and your virtual infrastructure. The endpoints really changed, but getting the head so you're not actually
Yeah.
depending on the moment that something gets into your endpoint. That's where I'm living my life these days, and trying to work with executives, not just public company boards, but like every level executive. Like, come on, CFOs, you're CFO of a 100-person company. You can guide the ship.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was reading a statistic a while ago about 90% of the interactions that we have that the world has with the internet are on their phones. You use it for mobile banking, you use it for everything else. And Americans are different for a lot of reasons, but typically if you go to South America or you're dealing, in Africa, none of these people have computers. They all have phones.
Yeah.
And so that's how they interact, and that's how they interact with commerce, and that's how they live their lives. It's going, through their tiny screen on their phones. So it's a juicy target, and this is why Darian and I were, seeing last year we had the Super Bowl of 0 day attacks on iOS and Android. See who's going to get more. It turned out they were all about the same at the end of the year. If you kind of look at the way that the different attack vectors, especially like Lockbit, they're coming in, and that's how business is done these days.
I see Lockbit come up in Fletch's trending of the cybersecurity
Yeah,
landscape every single week. They're
yeah.
active. They know exactly what they're doing. They're very sophisticated. And the teams that are trying to defend against them, good luck. It's really hard. Unless you're staying on top of where they're headed next, you're going to be had.
It's the old guard, the old traditional. We're ransomware families, but it's different techniques they're using, especially now with AI coming in. Lockbit's ahead of a lot of people. This last ransomware attack I worked on was with Akira. This one was not a phishing scheme, which I couldn't believe. I about fell out of my chair. Um, it was they went through. They had been working on patching their VPN systems, and their general attack vector is going through VPNs that aren't patched with MFA, so multi-factor authentication. And these guys had gotten most of it, but they hadn't gotten all of it. That's where their ingress point was. What
No
they
brainer, Chris, that they should be like companies should be updating
I
the
know,
most
and it's just
non-technical person can get. Like
yeah.
it's like, guys, MFA everywhere, please.
Well, their accounting system was being run on a Windows 2003 server,
Oh man, that's part of the
and
problem.
their Active Directory was on a Windows 2008 server. So that should tell you a little bit about their commitment to cybersecurity. So
That's also another big problem, Chris. People on
yeah.
legacy infrastructure, and 90% of those threats we see out there are because of old Microsoft infrastructure. Yes.
Well, and I think we could do a lot though to stop a lot. I think you start talking a little bit about threat forecasting and
Yep.
things like that. And Darian and I lament about this all the time on the show, and we're glad to have you on finally because this is the first time we've had John here, man. Darian brought a stunt man. I'm sure that yeah, you don't even look alike, but that's okay. You both wear glasses, but
Yes.
no. So we talk about being more proactive and how do you thimble full of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I was kind of going back to my point earlier with the ransomware attacks. It used to be, do I pay the ransom? And now it's, do I disclose? Do I have to disclose? Oh, and now what's Bitcoin? That's the next one I usually get. So it's kind of Luddite CEOs that really don't understand this. But if you can, the conversation that I think CISOs don't have is they have a very reactive mindset. One of the banks I'm working with in Europe, very, very large, huge bank,
Yep.
and they brought me in to go sit down and talk to their security team. And I was doing the assessment, and it's 100%. And I'm not trying to disparage Microsoft at all, but it's all Microsoft, starting from Defender, all the way through Sentinel SIM and everything. And their whole focus is a very Microsoft first focus. And my conversation with the team and the CISO sitting there, the CISO that was sitting in the room, I said, well, they need to fire you because you've built an entirely proactive cybersecurity program.
Oh,
And
reactive. Yeah. Right.
yeah, reactive. Oh, sorry. I said you need to become more proactive because
Yeah.
you're not going to get that with what you've got because the threats are real. If you look at finance, that's pretty much either one, two, or three on the targets.
And it's
And
interesting.
so,
It's hard to be these CSOs. I sympathize with them. We have lined up. The British are coming. The British are coming. Like if you think
yeah,
back to the days of the Civil War, that is kind of how it works still. It's like we have things ingrained in our brains that this is how we do cybersecurity. Comes out of the big banks. It comes out of the secret agencies from years
yeah,
ago. Well, these people trained in those organizations. And when you do have armies of people, you can fight like that. But now we're in a world of much more like as you have the rise of the terrorist groups, it's like you don't know where the bad guys are. It's much more guerrilla warfare. And so being proactive is really hard for these guys because they have a wall of threats, like
they
that
don't
big
think that way.
wall. And they're like, well, which one then? Which brick do I choose? And it's like they need help getting the right signals in place. And they aren't thinking this way. Like,
No.
right there, that one right there, that's going to be it.
Well, you know damn good and well, the first question the CEO is going to ask you is, what did you do to prevent this? And it's like, well, we've got this and we've got, Proofpoint, we've got all these other great systems that we've spent, $25 million a year to implement. And we still got hit.
And they're going to
Because
call it SOC 2, or you have like the right compliance in place.
yeah,
Yeah, but you aren't focused on the right threat.
I
And so,
focus on the right things. And because they're out there. I mean, the noise is out there. I've been doing this for a very long time as a salty old, cybersecurity guy. I don't need a solution to tell me where the bad guys are coming from based on, what's going on in the world. You can kind of detect that, but most organizations can't. I mean, they don't have a big old ugly salty guy like me to come in and yell at them and but they do need to have something, kind of a radar and yeah, we were talking earlier. I mean, we talk a lot about alert fatigue, especially with cybersecurity companies. One of the downsides of having a SIM is a lot of companies don't do a very good job of tuning their SIMs to basically get rid of a lot of the alert
oh my gosh,
fatigue. That's why I kind of see where we need to be is we need to get more intelligence about the vulnerabilities that are coming our way. And we just don't do that very well as cybersecurity people because we always look at, we're always looking in the rearview mirror. And CEO's job is to look straight ahead through the windshield.
I think you hit on a really important point. Like your analogy, CEO has to look straight through the windshield and like, what's next? What's coming? The cyber folks are not really looking ahead that way. And it's like, how do we instill more of that thinking in them in a way that makes them really enjoy it and embrace it? I almost see it as a public service to help the next generation of cyber professionals really think differently in this transition
Yeah,
phase.
I mean that was kind of the whole
Coming from a grizzly guy like you who actually thinks very forward, by the way.
the whole thesis behind what we're trying to do with the threat show is just that is trying to make it easy for people to understand what the different threats or vulnerabilities that are coming to your way and then obviously how do you deal with those. And we talk about basic cybersecurity hygiene things like patching. We talk a lot about cybersecurity education and cyber awareness and really kind of making cyber everybody's responsibility is, not just the scary people in the closet in the dark that nobody ever talks to. I was giving Jake a hard time. He said, "You look like the guy in the closet, the cybersecurity guy in the closet." But Jake's our wonderful producer. But no, I think we're kind of moving to there is going to be a cathartic shift in this industry, and it's got to happen because I personally believe that the bad guys outnumber the good guys in this space.
Oh,
And
you
then
look
once quantum
all,
starts rolling around, and once AI starts really kind of evolving more, and then you got quantum computing coming in, quantum encryption. Our adversaries are way ahead of us on quantum encryption, not quantum computing, but quantum encryption. That's going to be a game changer. And I think that most of our security teams, like I said, because we tend to focus on very tactical issues, managing down as a CISO, the guys that get paid to look out of the windscreen in the windshield, those are the guys who are going to see this first. And I think that I mean the proof is in the pudding in terms of the number of cybersecurity AI and how AI has affected my company, how quantum is going to affect my company. I've been doing seminars on these for a long, just 1 hour webinars, educational webinars on it. This is something that's up here in their heads right now because they want to be prepared for it. Whereas most CISOs are going, oh my God, how do I deal with Log4j tomorrow? We've got to get beyond that. We've got to be more strategic about how we think.
Totally agree with you. And so much of the time, it's trying to check that compliance box so you can close a deal. Speaking of which, part of the threat show is what threats are trending right now. It's interesting. Working on Fletch, we know all the threats that are trending right now. That's our job, and taking the world beyond threat intelligence and into a world of threat forecasting. Like we forecast the weather, don't we? Should maybe be forecasting threats to X industry or at X technology. And looking through the Fletch product this week, something that caught my eye, we always have another WordPress and another Microsoft thread. But it's funny, there's another
Why do
WordPress.
they still use that damn thing?
They are good products. They are definitely good products. And
Yeah,
it
I
looks
know.
they're easy to use. They're very ubiquitous. They're in people's brains already. But like if you look at like CVE 2024 7950, and it's so funny to say these CVs, but they're a very good, way to think about threats if you're in the threat world. If you're not in the threat world, folks, and you're more an executive, it's a threat to WordPress. And
Hmm.
what's interesting about this, it's like just keep your WordPress up to date. I
Yeah.
was having a conversation with a WordPress founder a couple months back, and it's like they constantly are telling their user base, like, keep it up to date. It seems like no brainer, but people don't do it because their user base doesn't really think about it. They think about, well, we want to get more customers on our website, and they don't remember the cyber thing. And it's just like this one simple, like it's like flossing your teeth in that case.
Yeah, and obviously a web developer is not going to really even think about patching their WordPress and things like that. That's, that again, that's the whole dichotomy between
That's easy.
IT and security and all that. And security guys will think about securing the web server, but if it's on-prem, but if it's in the cloud, they don't think about that. So, and so if you go to GoDaddy, you can you can open up a WordPress incident and it doesn't come patched. It's whatever they give you. People just don't think about it. But
So it's
again,
like
it
going
it
down the
becomes a pretty big attack vector. One of the biggest threats that happens with developers and the reason why CISOs are kicking and screaming, having to take over DevSecOps is DevOps organizations have a really nasty habit of publishing credentials in their code that they commit to GitHub. And so when we're slinging code or we're writing, or building websites or whatever, we just want it to work and we want to look pretty and work well, and we don't think about the undercarriage of that and the dark nethers. And there's companies like GitGuardian and some of the other folks out there who do a lot of GitHub scanning to go identify secrets. That's actually become a really big problem for companies that, that's it's the guy who's not even remotely close to security that's causing them challenges. And sadly, most of the time it's the CEO who's the biggest.
It is. I totally agree. Most
It
of the
is, yeah, they're the worst.
But I'm going to stop you for a sec on that one because I really like what you're saying. And it's interesting because most companies that run WordPress actually aren't these larger organizations. The companies that are these larger organizations are running a more sophisticated product to manage their web presence. And it's more of these companies that are 100 people, 200 people. They're running WordPress. It really is the job of the web developer just to remember, like, part of my job is to keep this thing up to date because I know cyber threats are coming this way. And so making it something that just like simple reminders to them, making sure they, hey, the weather's gonna be bad in WordPress in a few days, update it. And I think that's really important to start making them and helping them think that way. Same thing goes for code and developers. It's like they are not the consumers of these new code repository scanning tools. Like they aren't. That's still bigger companies who can afford those tools, one, and bigger
Yeah.
companies would monitor those. When it comes down to it, developers just need to know, like, is there really a threat to this code library I'm using? And if there is, like, what should I do? And give me some simple instructions. Is it really being exploited right now? And once again, help them forecast. I'm going to go into a bit of a longer one here. Chameleon, which
Mhm.
is, it's an Android backed Trojan that's evolved. And right now it's targeting employees and using CRM apps.
Yeah,
And
going through CRM apps. Yeah.
you know this one. And it's funny, you mentioned the mobile phone a minute ago being so ubiquitous. Well, yeah, this is an Android. It's really interesting how simple of a fix it would be if people just do simple stuff. You mentioned 2FA, you mentioned a handful of things, and it's like things like this don't have to be an issue, Chris.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be. Chameleon was an interesting one because obviously getting into an organization CRM system, and I kind of converge CRM and ERP into one bucket. nowadays. But this latest ransomware attack that I was dealing with, they got into their accounting system and they were using their mobile phones to access most of it. I don't know if it was Chameleon or anything like that, but that's one of the systems that they hit. So those are the big targets. And CRM is, where do you keep all your PII data? It's in your CRM systems. So they're very juicy targets. Androids, because of the proliferation of mobile phones, especially Androids, it's a beautiful set of events for bad guys. Why do you rob a bank? Because that's where the money is.
Yeah.
Why do you hit a CRM system? Well, because that's where all the data is.
These things are so easily avoidable if you can educate your people in advance and say, guys, this thing's out there. This is how it is. We make sure 2FA's in place. Just simple, simple stuff. But they need to know it's going to be an issue. They're so busy running their business. And a lot of these organizations don't even have IT teams that are talking to the whole team. These things, people need to learn about these things when they're in the heat of that moment. Like, this thing's headed our way. If we don't do this, guys, you basically don't have a job tomorrow.
Piss poor planning equals piss poor performance. And a lot of organizations don't consider, they just consider the infrastructure, and they just want to deal with what's going on with the infrastructure to protect their jobs. And that's what we're dealing with right now is if I start identifying all my vulnerabilities, you're basically stripping me down naked in front of my boss. So as a security professional, you get a little on the defensive side, and that's just how we are, because that's our nature. As part of users go, they don't even think about it. They think, oh, it's in the cloud, it's protected. If it's my company's system, my company's CRM solution, I shouldn't have to worry about any of this stuff. So I don't need to think about cybersecurity. And so there's a meeting in the middle, and I think multi-factor authentication was actually a really good start. Because I don't know if you remember when MFA started coming out, people were just screaming and hollering, oh my God, I don't have to look at the damn text message. But now it's part of life. It's part of who we are and what we do. And so now we're kind of getting into, as I get older, the CAPTCHA things kill me. I'm trying to put my glasses on, trying to find the damn fire hydrant or the bike, but that's CAPTCHA's part of life now. And so slowly the worlds are merging, but I think you're spot on with it's the education side on the unmasked washes, I guess, that they really don't understand what's at risk if they are breached or their company is breached. They could lose their job or the company's reputation. And there's got to be a convergence even more so. And I think technically we're doing it like Okta's, the MFA side of it. And,
It takes a more sophisticated company around Okta when a lot of these companies could just
yeah. And then Okta broke our hearts by getting whacked twice. I mean, my God, I don't even know where to start on this stuff. But the onus is on the user, and I think it's on the organization to make sure that the endpoint users are educated enough to where they understand not just how to use the product, but the security implications of the product. And it goes back to WordPress too, and the DevOps, and security is everybody's responsibility in the organization.
the way it's taught today, oh, go take course, do it while you're watching TV late at night. Just click through it. Doesn't do anything.
No,
It's deep into the brain because it's not a timely, meaningful thing. So that needs to shift. It needs to be like, our company's actually being targeted with this. It is coming our way. In the next 3 to 4 days, it probably hits us because it's like us. This is what we need to do, team, and you're on board. Let's do it. I mean, think about educating people like that when they feel like they're part of it and they're part of the movement to make sure our company stays safe so we can actually do our business, as opposed to, well, what and if this happens, let's educate you. And it's like that just seems no brainer, but that's not. It's starting to shift this way, but it takes a very forward thinking team to do it.
if you look at any defense industry, I mean, they're all, they use early warning systems.
Yeah.
And there's a great company out of Scandinavia that does EWS for cyber attacks called Arctic. They basically are helping the government of Ukraine look at the threat landscape and to understand and how to predict attacks that are coming in from Russia and Iran and all the other nation state attackers. I don't know why any company in the world wouldn't use their product or a product similar to that, just because of the fact that they do a really good job of predicting, just using AI and understanding kind of the behaviors in the market and understanding what's happening and what the chatter that's going on. Because as an Intel guy, I tend to look at chatter more than I look at anything else. And you can really start predicting where these people are coming from. And we talked about this earlier. It's the old guard, same bad guys, but different techniques that they're using. And if you can stay up with the techniques, you can understand the behavior and understand how to correlate that back into your enterprise to be able to make sure your systems are patched, make sure you're updated, make sure everybody understands these threats are coming. And that's how, as a CISO, I'll tie this all together, I guess. That's how a CISO can really provide a lot of value back to their boards, is really just kind of understanding the entire threat landscape as opposed to the one that's directly in front of them or in the rearview mirror. Most of the time in the rearview mirror. So,
I think that's really well said, Chris. If I think about where I spend so much of my life is like sometimes the things that we're recommending can feel pretty basic to the sophisticated eye, but most people aren't even doing it. It's just some basic hygiene across companies of all sizes would make a big difference. A big area that I've been spending a lot of time with, and we'll have to do this on the next show, is I'm spending a lot of time with some of the best security consultants out there. I'm seeing a rise of security consultants and managed service,
of course,
across the mid-market because internal teams just can't do this stuff.
mm-hmm.
And a lot of these guys are coming in saying, great, I have a little IT background, a little bit of security background. I can become a managed service provider. I can become a security consultant. And they're coming in and a lot of them are saying, well, we're going to do best practices. We're going to check some compliance boxes. And I think there's an opportunity in the Renaissance moment where you have a lot of these companies rising where they can be the stewards of a new way of thinking. They can be the stewards of helping the world to understand. It's like, hey, we're going to help you just live ahead of threats. We're going to make it easy for executives to understand this stuff. And it could be a really interesting moment, similar to like when QuickBooks came out with Intuit, created QuickBooks and making accountants and the transparency between accountants and executive teams change. I think we're at an interesting moment where you have a rise of a lot of these folks where we could really make a dent in that whole supply chain that's being attacked by nation states. That excites me a lot. I'd love to, on our next show, dig into like the role of security consultant MSP and how we help them and give them a little advice. How about that?
Well, I totally am. The problem is getting through the noise with those guys, and they're inundated with so many different technologies they know nothing about. And so, I mean, they're as dumb as we are, enough to be dangerous. But a lot of these guys are really just trying to figure out, how do I add cybersecurity into my offering so I don't go out of business? And you see a lot of the big OEM guys doing that, and it's frustrating. But companies that I've worked with, like Cloud4C and some of the other guys who take a security first approach, and then the platform, those are the ones that I see are being successful in this right now. But the other side of that is they're being very proactive about it.
Let's not spoil the next
check the
show.
box. Yeah.
So. I know you have such wisdom to share. I've had a lot of fun digging in today.
I know, brother.
Some of the most recent threats. If you really want to go dig into them, you can go to fletch.ai. It has all the latest on that. But for right now, we're going to try to weave in a lot more of these threats into the show, get it more into the narrative, make it something that a lot more people can understand, and you'll see us become much more the bridge between the technical and non-technical and help bring this next generation of companies into the light so we can live ahead of nation states and attackers that can move so much faster than us. Thank you guys for listening. Chris, thank you for being here. You bring a smile to my face every single time.
No, I appreciate it, Grant. I really do. And just out to the audience, if anybody has any questions, comments, please leave them for us, or you can contact us directly. We're happy to help, and this is what we do. Grant, thanks for having me today. I really do appreciate it. It's been fun, and I'm so glad to get the band back together. It's great to catch up, everybody. Thanks.
Bye, guys.